Hello and welcome to this video lecture for the University of Connecticut's online course, Classics and Ancient Mediterranean Studies 1103, Classical Mythology. I'm Roger Travis, Associate Professor of Classics at the University of Connecticut, and whether you're enrolled in this course or not, I hope you enjoy the lecture and learn something about new ways of looking at classics and at myth. Thanks for watching.
So in Book 5 of the Metamorphoses, we have the story of the enormous battle that Perseus fights with the forces of his rival Phineas. Now, it's really important to understand exactly what's going on here so that we can understand what Ovid's trying to do with Mythic Guy. Perseus has just married Andromeda, whom he rescued from the sea monster, of course, when she was chained to the rock, etc., etc. And unfortunately, Andromeda was already engaged to another guy whose name was Phineas. Towards the end of the wedding feast, Phineas arrives with a whole bunch of supporters, and a big fight ensues. Why is all of that interesting? Well, first of all, because the big fight is something that Ovid makes a huge deal of. And despite the fact that for us it's incredibly boring, nevertheless it was an important element of what makes epic to have a big battle like that, which you know from having looked at things like the Odyssey, where Odysseus has a huge battle with the suitors, and there's a certain parallelism between the battle at the banquet in the Odyssey and the battle at the banquet in Metamorphoses with Perseus. But the overriding concern is that to be an epic poet, you have to write an epic battle like this, and it has to go on for a while. And if you've read a lot of these epic battles, you realize that Ovid is, on the one hand, kind of phoning it in, but on the other hand, making fun of epic battles themselves by phoning it in and by doing kind of unexpected things from time to time in the course of this battle. But the way it ends is the really important thing. First of all, despite the fact that this is described as one of these stereotypical epic battles, the way that Perseus wins it is a little bit questionable. Of course, he pulls out Medusa's head and he starts turning people into stone. It's obviously something that only he can do. He's a mythic guy who has accomplished the feat of killing Medusa, but it's not the way Achilles would have done it, and it's not the way Aeneas does it in Virgil's Aeneid. They do it with the sword, they do it with conventional ways of battle. Perseus has a prop, and he pulls the prop out, and all of a sudden the battle is over. But it gets even more interesting from there, because at the very end, Perseus is standing up, holding the head of Medusa. Phineas is on his knees in front of Perseus, his face turned away so he doesn't have to look at the head of Medusa. And this is how it goes down. Now Phineas rules his battle so unjust at last. But what is he to do? He sees statues in many poses, knows they are his men, calls each by name and begs his aid. In disbelief he touched those nearest him. Marble they were. He turned away, his hands held abject in defeat, his arms outstretched sideways for mercy. "You have won," he said. "Put down your monstrous magic. Put it down, your Gorgon's head, whoever she may be, that makes men marble. Put it down, I beg. I fought you not because I hated you or wanted royal power. For my betrothed I battled. Time gave me the better claim, your merits you. Would I had given way. You, bravest of the brave, grant me but this, my life. The rest, let everything be yours." He dared not look at Perseus as he spoke, and Perseus answered, "Cowardest of cowards, what I have power to grant, I grant, and great the guerdon to your craven soul. Fear not, no steel shall work you woe. Oh no, my gift shall be an everlasting monument. In Cepheus' palace men shall gaze at you forever, and my wife take comfort from the sight of her betrothed." And as he speaks, he thrusts the Gorgon's head in Phineas's face, his wincing face. Even then he tries to turn his eyes away, but now his neck is stiff, his moist eyes fixed and hard and stony. There, with frightened pleading face and abject hands, in cringing pose, the marble statue stands. So what do I mean that in this passage Ovid is taking Mythic Guy apart? Well, to figure that out, you need to see, as any Roman reader would have seen, the very strong parallel between this moment where Perseus kills Phineas and the moment at the very, very end of Virgil's Aeneid when Aeneas kills his rival Turnus. Okay, so you haven't encountered the Aeneid yet, and so you don't know the story, but I can fill you in as much as you need to know. After Aeneas gets to Italy, he makes an alliance with the people who are the original Latin people, who live in a place called Latium, which turns out later to be where Rome is going to be founded, and it's why the language they spoke was called Latin. But in any case, the way they make this alliance is that the king betroths his daughter Lavinia to Aeneas, despite the fact that Lavinia was already engaged to another guy whose name is Turnus. Turnus is justifiably put out about this, and so he decides to start a very, very big war, with plenty of wonderful battle scenes, which are of the same kind of epic battle scene that Ovid is playing with in Book 5 with Perseus. But what's more, the specific parallel is undeniable. The mythic guy, Perseus, in the Metamorphoses, Aeneas in the Aeneid, has been betrothed/married to a woman who was already engaged. In fact, a princess who was already engaged. And the jilted groom comes for revenge. At the end of both battles, in Book 5 of Metamorphoses and at the end of Book 12 in the Aeneid, that same jilted bridegroom is on his knees in front of his betrothed's new husband. Now the parallels get more interesting because both of these jilted guys on their knees plead with the successful mythic guy, Aeneas and Perseus. And although the substance of the pleas is slightly different between the Metamorphoses and the Aeneid, both of them are basically pleading for their lives. And both of them are killed by the mythic guy. That killing in the Aeneid is one of the strangest moments and the most debated moments in the whole Aeneid because Aeneas hesitates before he plunges his sword into Turnus's chest. He hesitates and is about to spare Turnus, but then he catches sight of a belt that a friend of his used to wear, and he gets really mad. In fact, an emotion called furor takes hold of him, madness even, wrath, an emotion which makes him parallel with Achilles in the Iliad, and more importantly, an emotion that, according to the way the Aeneid should work, where Aeneas is a new kind of hero, not like Achilles, but who is nevertheless a precursor of the new kind of Roman hero who is exemplified above all in Augustus, an emotion that Aeneas just shouldn't feel. And yet he does feel it, and he kills Turnus. What is Virgil doing here? Well, there are two ways to look at that. One is that he is consciously undercutting Augustus by means of the weakness of Mythic Guy that we were talking about in the last segment. Another is just that he is using that weakness of Mythic Guy to show what a huge task the founding of Rome was and how Aeneas is a very, very strong hero. And in fact, his giving into furor at the end just indicates how incredibly spectacular his other deeds in the course of the Aeneid were. But in either case, Ovid is, without a doubt, playing with the end of the Aeneid in Book 5 of the Metamorphoses and telling his Roman audience that he, Ovid, understands what Virgil was doing. And more than that, he, Ovid, understands that what Virgil did at the end of the Aeneid is an undercutting of that new Roman kind of hero, and by very strong implication, an undercutting of Augustus. And so this moment in Book 5 ends up being yet another brick removed from the edifice of Augustus's self-image. Yet another way for Ovid to take myth and Rome apart.